Welcome to the Quill Kettle podcast, where intuition meets industry. Join me as I sit down with authors, editors, designers, and other publishing professionals for tarot-guided interviews that blend business, psychology, and magic to dive deep into what it really takes to build a sustainable and inspiring creative career. Each interview is guided by a 5-card tarot spread that I've created specifically for this show. The cards are interpreted through an archetypal lens rather than used for divination. The intention held while pulling the cards for each interview is you, the listener. I hope each episode brings you closer to finding your own aligned path to a creative career that fits your life. Today I'm joined by Elise Kova. Elise is the #1 New York Times, #1 Sunday Times, USA Today, and internationally best-selling author. She enjoys telling stories of fantasy worlds filled with magic and deep emotions. When not writing, she can be found playing video games, drawing, chatting with readers on social media, or daydreaming about her next story. The core of our conversation today is guided by the steadfast and sure King of Pentacles. The publishing world is ever-changing and fast-paced, so it is important to make decisions about your career from a grounded and self-aware state. Showing up, doing the work with confidence, and being proud of what you write really is half the battle. In the unconscious wing, we have the 5 of Cups. You might be spending time focusing on what you lack or grieving not being as far along as you'd hoped. You can bridge that gap to more confidence through the Hierophant. To get out of the mindset of focusing on lack, you either need to serve other writers or find a trusted mentor or guide, depending on what aspect of the card is calling to you. Helping others with something you are already good at is a great way to get confidence, and being willing to listen and learn from those who have gone before is a very valuable skill. In the conscious wing of this spread, we have the 8 of Pentacles. Writing can be a tedious task full of repetition and practice, but that is truly how you can master the skill of storytelling. And bridging this card is the 6 of Wands. You learn to be confident and sure of your voice as an author by celebrating victories. Share your wins, no matter how small. Even if you just write them down, but saying them publicly does help speak it into existence. All right, onto the show. All right, hi Elise, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here.
Yeah. So you have a new book coming out in the summer, and we're going to talk about that for sure. But in doing my research on you, you've been in it. And so I kind of want to go like back all the way back for my first question. And I want to know when you had that first pull towards storytelling.
It's hard for me to place a first pull towards storytelling because I think it's always been a little bit a part of my life in some form or fashion. I mean, I have these construction paper stapled together books that are just scribbles that, my grandma saved from when I was a young child, sort of things. I don't necessarily have a point in which I can say like, oh, this was it. This was the defining moment, because books were just fortunately always a part of my life. I was in 6th grade when I wrote my first chapter story. I didn't finish it. I think I still have the file somewhere, but I think I got around 30,000 words in, give or take. So got to novella length of it.
Nice.
But looked back on it now and go, wow, that was very something I wrote when I was in 6th grade. But even then, it wasn't necessarily from a perspective of like, oh, I want to be an author or I want to be a professional storyteller. And it was just I love books and I love stories and I love fantasy. And it's something that makes me happy to engage with.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was 11 when I wrote my first story as well. I wrote and illustrated a story for my baby cousin.
Aww.
Yeah, so no, that totally makes sense. And the reason why I kind of like wanted to go there, and we'll sort of go through it and see where that got you, because whenever I talk to authors that are a little bit more established, I like to like go from the listener's perspective and be like, because sometimes we look at authors and we're like, man, they've got everything, they've got all the things, they've got like, they've got the books coming out and the deals and the whatnot. But like sometimes it's really hard to remember that they start somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
that we all kind of started from this place. And some of us have been at it since kids. Some of us, I've talked to some authors who were like, I don't know, I was like 21 and I picked up a book and I was like, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden they're like writing, right? And yeah, so like with the writing and moving through kind of your timeline a little bit, um, can you sort of like walk through that process of realizing that writing books could be an actual career?
I never considered it a career, even when I had published my first book. And I don't want to say I never considered it a career because I know it's obviously a career. But I never considered it to be something that was like, oh, this is going to be what I'm going to do. So I'll rewind a little bit, fast forward from 6th grade, rewind from modern day. The year is now 2012. And after being really burnt out through high school, college, and then my master's program, going from one to the other, I had not cracked a book for pleasure in probably a solid like 4 or 5 years at this point.
Mhm.
Like, it was just one of those things where I had done so much reading and so much writing that I had to do, that the idea of doing it for pleasure just hadn't crossed my mind in almost half a decade. And I got really inspired. There were a number of factors that kind of led to this perfect storm of inspiration, but I got really inspired and I started writing what would become Air Awakens by posting a chapter a day on Fiction Press. Fiction Press is kind of like a precursor to Wattpad for anyone unfamiliar.
Okay.
And I swear I was like in some kind of fugue state because I wrote the entire Air Awakens series, which the original drafts were close to 1,000,000 words in the span of a year. So that was the entire year of 2012, basically. I wrote that series, and then when I was done, I had amassed like a decent amount of followers on Fiction Press, and all of them were going, well, what's next? And so I went, okay, well, what is next? Like, I have books. They're done. I don't know if they're good, but people seem to enjoy them. Random strangers on the internet who don't owe me any praise seem to enjoy them. I had a friend from college who had gone the traditional publishing route. She had secured an agent. She had gotten a publishing deal. And she was very generous when I reached out to her, gave me information, actually read my book, gave me like a critique edit letter, like super generous and kind with her time. And I started querying agents kind of in 2013. And I queried 111 agents over the span of like just over a year. So that was 2013 to 2014. And then I never had a problem with independent publishing, and I use independent publishing and self-publishing interchangeably, just for anyone listening, because it's always sometimes a question. I never had a problem with it, and it was something I actually always kind of liked the idea of because my background is in business. And so I was like, I don't hate the idea of really kind of embracing the entrepreneurial aspect of independent publishing, having the control, all of those things. But at this point in time, this was, in 2014, books that were independently published weren't picked up by traditional publishers. And I am very much a person who's like, I want to know all of my options before I close a door to something. And so I'm like, if I independently publish, I'm closing the door, at least on this series, to traditional publishing. So let's just see. Let's just see if something happens. As I said, I queried 111 agents. They all said no. So that didn't pan out. And then 2014 to 2015, I kind of took a year. I edited, I got my marketing plan in order, my business plan in order, and I published Air Awakens in August of 2015. So I've now been a published author for just over 10 years. And the interesting thing, going back to what I said, when I published it, I was working as a social media manager for a large company, and it was very in line with what I had studied. It was, I enjoyed the job. I can't be like, oh, I had this job that I hated and,
Right.
I wanted to escape it and this was my way out. Like, it was very much one of those, I have a good job at a good company with a clear career path that I can like see evolving over time. And I don't see anything replacing that, realistically speaking, because it was one of those things where in my head, I'm like, most people go into this and fail. And at that point, I'd been rejected by 111 people. So I didn't have a reason to think that it was going to amount to much. I was hoping that I could, publish a series and maybe pay for like a semi-decent trip somewhere, like a vacation at the end of the year, that kind of thing. But the books did way better than they had any right to do. And by January of 16, I became a full-time author. And I've been a full-time author ever since, not without hiccups or hardships along the way, but managed to kind of keep that going for myself. So it really was something that it was like, until it happened, I wasn't planning on it happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think that that's really important as well. The idea of just taking things as they come. A lot of authors that I talk to, like, that seems to be a common thread of like, I had that similarly. Like, I self-published my first book in 2013, and I just kind of like hit publish on my lunch break. I was working at a newspaper. I was a graphic designer, it was great. And I'm like, oh, cool. Okay, well, I'm just going to publish this and then we'll go for it and see what happens. Went off, picked up my dry cleaning, went about my day as if nothing was going to happen. And so, like, I like that, not that you shouldn't have goals or like be forward thinking, but also like how much pressure it can be to like hang some sort of success metric on a book, and specifically when it's your first book or your first kind of series. So as a new kind of baby author, when you put these books out into the world, what was your process in that? Like, where did you choose to publish it? Did you, like, I know at that time it was still very popular, like social media was still actually moving for authors, like people who followed us still saw what we were posting, and like,
wild
I know, isn't
concept.
that crazy? But what was kind of that process of getting into, after you made that decision and then you went into it, kind of how did that happen, I guess?
I think the biggest thing that I did, that I look back, and I don't want to say like, oh, no one else was doing this and this was my secret formula, because that's a recipe for setting people up for disappointment when they try and do things. But I think that one of the things that I look back and I see that still to this day feels a little different for the time was when I was kind of putting together my marketing plan. I didn't just look at what indie authors were doing. I was just looking at how books were being talked about by readers on social media, and where were readers finding those books. If someone was saying, hey, this is a new book coming out, where did they get it from? And for me, I think that created this marketing plan that looked a lot more like a traditionally published book marketing plan than I think a lot of indies were putting out, especially at that time. And I don't want to say everyone. I don't want to be like, oh, I invented this thing, because I didn't. But I said, this is how much I had to invest in this little pet project of mine, and this is how much money I'm comfortable losing, because I looked at it like starting a business, and starting a business is a lot like gambling. You hope to win and expect to lose.
Right.
And about half of that budget went to physical arcs and sending physical arcs to influencers, which there were indies at the time that were like, why are you kind of pushing that? And I was like, well, because it's what I see people do when they launch a book. Like, and I see these people talking about it. And there was Bookstagram. Twitter was big at the time. But Bookstagram was kind of just sort of taking off. And I did kind of cold calling. I slid into people's DMs, and I was very much like, hey, I see you liked Throne of Glass and you're excited for the next book, because this is when the series is still actively coming out. My series is kind of like, people have described it as Throne of Glass meets Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think you'd like it. Can I send you a copy? If not, no worries. But that's sort of like really kind of polite, soft touch contact. And I got a lot of people who had decent followings that just said yes that way. And I sent them a physical arc, and they shared it. So I think that really helped. But I I always want to emphasize that there is an element of luck in this industry. Like you can do everything right by every measure and it just doesn't happen. So, I think there is space where the algorithm just blessed me too. And that's something that wasn't a part of my marketing plan. It just worked out the way it did.
Yeah, and like I remember when when the Air Awakens series came out, and I remember that there was a conversation that I had with some other author, I think like maybe a friend of ours or something like that, that was talking about like the art that you commissioned for the front cover and all of this kind of stuff, that it was very much in line with what fantasy readers wanted, not just like, because I think when independent publishing kind of became a thing and people were able to just put up whatever they wanted, I think there was lots of risk takers and lots of people just doing like wild things that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. But this idea of like commissioning art that very much fit in with that painted fantasy style, like really knowing what readers are looking for when they pick up a certain genre, like, was that intentional, or was that just something that kind of happened because you were a fantasy reader? You just kind of like did it.
It was intentional, but it was inspired by being a fantasy reader. I mean, I just thought about the covers that I was always drawn to as a kid and as a teen and growing up, and it was always the covers that had these beautiful painted illustrations. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm writing a fantasy book, so why wouldn't I have a beautiful painted illustrated cover? Like that's what you do in like that was
Right.
just sort of where my brain was at.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. Okay, so I want to like skip into the actual books themselves and are all of your books young adult?
No. So I have always written in a mix of upper young adult and adult. So Air Awakens is upper young adults. And then what I consider to be my sophomore series, my Loom Saga, that was adult. And
Okay.
then I had technically the Golden Guard trilogy was the second series I published, but that's also set in the Air Awakens world, and those are shorter, so it's like a weird like my next kind of new world series big title was my Loom Saga, and that was adult. And then after that I had a new adult, and then I returned to the Air Awakens world with Vortex Chronicles, which was also upper young adult. And then I had Married to Magic, which is adult, and then A Trial of Sorcerers, upper young adult, and now in modern times I have Arcana Academy, which is adult, and Dragon Cursed, which is upper young adult.
Oh, okay. So how did the stories kind of come to you? If you like, yeah, that's just it. I'm not going to add anything else to that question.
I think for me, I always have a kernel of inspiration that is my starting point that everything else spins out from, but it's never the same thing for two books. So for Air Awakens, that was very much a song. For the Loom Saga, it was an evolution of thought process from how I built the magic system in Air Awakens that kind of created this original nugget of inspiration for the world. For Married to Magic, the title of A Deal with the Elf King was the first thing that came to me. And it came to me so vividly one day that I distinctly remember Googling for like an hour going, I must have heard this book title somewhere. I'm referencing something. What is it? And I struggle to find, I don't want to say it's not out there, but like you Google and you expect it to immediately come up, and like there, it wasn't there. So, I have that sort of initial inspiration that is just enough for my mind to go, that's an interesting thought. And then I sit with that and I start to obsess over it and I start to ask questions of it and explore it. And the world usually spirals out from there.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's kind of similar to how I work as well. The idea of sometimes it's a title, sometimes it's a character name, sometimes it's a plot point, sometimes it's a magic thing, and it just kind of like works its way out from there. So when you are starting a story or when you're writing, how do you balance the expectations of your readers and then you as like staying true to your story values or why you write books in the first place? Is it something that you work on simultaneously, or do you just like write what you want to write and then figure it out from there? What does that kind of look like for you?
Well, I'll start by saying that I'm a firm believer of if you are not having fun writing something, then it's not going to be fun to read. And so I will say that I have always written things that would make me happy and that have made me happy. That's not to say that there haven't been books that I've wanted to light on fire and chuck into a dumpster at various points in their writing and editing process.
Yeah.
But I think that uh, I have always wanted to write fantasy because I love fantasy. My books have always had some amount of romance in them, in some cases, less in other cases, because I love romance. And
Mhm.
so there is that. I will say it was somewhat a lesson hard learned at the start of my career regarding reader expectations because I had Air Awakens come out. And Air Awakens did, like I said, way better than it had any right to do. And then I moved on to my Loom Saga, and I was so excited for my Loom Saga, and I'm still profoundly proud of that
Mhm.
series and the work I did, especially for where I was at in my career and in my journey as a writer. But I had this somewhat, in retrospect, naive and slightly probably arrogant assumption that if a reader enjoys fantasy, they will read any fantasy from an author.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, Air Awakens is a single point of view. It is a fantasy romance towing the line of romantasy. I still call it a fantasy romance because it has a lot of plot, but
Mhm.
the romance is strong in that series and it is upper young adult. And then I come out with the Loom Saga, which is fantasy, but it's a gaslamp fantasy. So it's magic
Mm.
versus machine with steampunk vibes. It has humanoid but non-human species. There are no humans in that world. It is a far more dense fantasy with a far more complicated magic system, far more politics in it. It is a
Mhm.
multi-point of view adult series, and commercially speaking, that series tanked.
Mhm.
And it was almost this really hard pill to swallow of like, okay, readers and then the next series I did after it, I kind of count this as my exploratory phase. Like I said, was a new adult that was more on like the urban fantasy paranormal side of things. And that also did really poorly. And so it wasn't until I kind of returned to my roots with Vortex Chronicles, I went back to sort of the classic otherworld, epic fantasy, you know, with a good dose of romance, even if it's not like shining in the forefront of things,
Right.
that I really started to find my momentum again. And I felt like readers returned to me. And it was almost like readers returned to me with this, like, oh, this is what we were waiting for. Thank you for finally
Right.
doing it. And I was like, okay, so readers do kind of want something specific from me.
Yeah.
And that it has been hard at times in the sense of there are books that I have written that I don't know whenever they'll be published because they're not Elise Kova books. They don't
Oh.
fit the Elise Kova brand. But that isn't to say that I'm like I and why led with this. It isn't to say that I'm writing things I don't want to write. I love what I
Mhm.
write. It just maybe means that I am strategic about between 5 projects I love, which project I ultimately pick is picked in mind with who I am as a brand and how I've set myself up and, what readers want and expect from me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just a normal part of doing business as well. I think there are a lot of authors who have kind of done that. I started out in young adult. And so fantasy is my first love. But when I was first starting out writing, I was really into the world building and the magic systems and the politics and all of that kind of stuff. But I was really struggling with character, with like characterization. So I had this like fantastical plot, but the characters just kind of muddled around within it, right? And so I had a friend and a mentor who was like, why don't you try to write a contemporary? Because then the world is set for you. You just dig into the characters and you just do your thing. And so I wrote a few young adult kind of coming of age, still romance, and just really dug into character development. And then I self-published them because I was just kind of like, why not? I can.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, like I thought that like my mom and my best friend would buy it and that would be the end of it, right? Like, and it didn't turn out that way, but I had a very successful first book. And then like you were saying, my story ideas kind of went in a different direction, and my next few books just really didn't do well. And I think that's like I kind of call it the rookie bubble, like when you're writing and you don't have any readers yet, and you sort of can just like really move around in whatever story you're telling, and you can do it just for the sheer love of writing this story and for the characters of the world or whatever. But then it goes out into the world and you start getting feedback. And there is a friend of mine who is an actor. We did an episode on it actually, where we talked about this like fall, where you kind of have this fall and then you have to find your way back to yourself and your craft. And it's through, because it's really hard when you first put something out there and you start getting feedback on it. It's really hard not to attach yourself to that, or to think. It was for me anyways, this idea of like, well, maybe I'm not very good at storytelling. Like, a lot of people liked my book, but the negative voices are always way louder, right? And it's really hard to move.
I always tell people, I'm like, for every 1-star review I see, I need like 5-star reviews to convince myself that I'm not a total hack.
Yeah, exactly. And then it gets to the point, like after you've really established, you kind of get to a point where I sort of see it as a tipping point where you have lots of good reviews, you got some bad reviews, you have people who like you, people who don't like you, and then you just sort of are able to be comfortable with it and move through that kind of like, oh well, I'm not for everyone. That book didn't do as well as this book did, or I, that person, I'm not for them, and that's okay. And you just kind of move on. Did you feel like in those couple series that didn't quote unquote do as well? Did you like, what was your kind of, I don't know, I guess emotional state, or like, did you struggle with any sort of like, maybe I shouldn't do this, maybe this isn't right for me? Like, was there any of that for you?
I think that it all happened so early in my career where everything was so fresh that I didn't want to go back to a corporate job. Like just personally, I was like, I like being a writer. I like storytelling. I like the freedom and flexibility. It's really hard not to like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Loom Saga came out and that kind of didn't find its footing, I was only like 18 months out from my previous job. I left on really good terms. Not that they were like holding a position for me, but at the very least, I knew they'd give me a recommendation, and I knew that if I had to jump back into interviews, so it wasn't kind of scary for me. I wouldn't say until I was getting into that second series, my urban fantasy paranormal, that wasn't doing well, and I'm thinking, okay, now I'm going on 3 years out of the job force. It's not like a cute, fascinating little blank on my resume anymore, like gap. It's now, oh, you've been out of the workforce as a recruiter might think for a longer period of time, and that started to be a little bit more stressful. But then also just from like a craft perspective, there was a bit that feeling of, okay, am I a one-hit wonder kind of thing in a way? Like, can I only write one series that really speaks to people? And I really don't think it was until Married to Magic, which that came out in 2020, so 5 years later, that I really had that moment of, I can do it again. I
Mhm.
can do it again. Not every, I've had books and series that have landed everywhere in the middle and at the bottom since then, at the very bottom of this is poor commercial success to this is average and that's fine, to now back on top and it's like, oh, okay, I can weather the storm. I can
Mhm.
survive through it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's also really important for any creative industry really, is that it's not linear. It's not climbing any sort of ladder like you can in the corporate world, right? Like for an entire span of a creative career, some things do well and some things don't, and you kind of have to manage those different, like you said, storms. And I think that's really important. I also have this kind of like theory for folks who started in independent publishing that when um, that we tend to experiment publicly, right?
Mhm.
Like authors back before self-publishing was a thing, when you had to like box up your manuscript and send it in to New York, right? And wait 6 months to hear anything, like you would write and you'd write and you'd write and you would kind of like even folks that I know now that are really dedicated to the traditional route, they've written 7, 8, 10 books before they even land an agent. And so there's this thing that folks who independently publish, we are doing all of that behind the scenes work in front of our readers.
Yeah.
And
For
so
better, for worse.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, which I think is kind of neat and kind of exciting. Like I've jumped around from so many different genres, which like this path is the best for me because I do a whole bunch of different things and I like to experiment and I like to take risks and I like to like move around and like I'm a librarian, so I've got my job and I love my job. I mean, it's books. I like work.
Yeah.
I like to say that my personality is basically paper because I'm a trained graphic designer and then I write and I'm a librarian. So if it's paper and I live in a forest, like just trees in all forms of their life is who I am as a
Well,
person.
you also live somewhere cold, so I imagine firewood plays a role at some point during the year. So,
Yes, excuse me. That is how my house is heated. So we haul, and that's one of the things okay, that's kind of an interesting segue into that too, because it's something that my readers find very fascinating about me is I have to haul water and I haul wood. Like we heat our home off the back of my husband. Basically, he goes out and he cuts down the trees and he does the thing and we haul it and we split it, and that's that's life for me. It's my day-to-day boring life, but readers find it fascinating because not a lot of people live like I live, right? and
yeah.
and so um so I want to move from that into like your readers and how you kind of established your readers and how you sort of picked and chose your brand, what to kind of show your readers, or what did they find interesting and fascinating about you?
So I started my tower guard, which is, I call it a street team because at the time that was kind of the nom du jour.
Yep.
It Now I also interchangeably use reader group because I think that's just a little more common. But I started that quite early with Air Awakens because, again, it was just something that I saw people doing. And my brain went, well, I can see the reasons behind it. And if it doesn't pan out, then it doesn't pan out. But that's still going to this day. And I love that little reader community. I think that it wasn't until later in my career that I really started to cement what my sort of hard lines were with my readers. But I think they were always there. I just hadn't like thought to myself, okay, this is it. And I think for me, one of my foundations, I've always tried to be transparent with my readers. Like when Ingram has emailed me at the end of the year and has said, hey, we're going to have to up print costs starting in March, and here's a calculator you can use, but don't rely on it until the new prices have rolled out. I have always tried to do things like immediately post to my street team or mention it in my newsletter just to give people a heads up on stuff like that. Or, if a reader is like, hey, with Married to Magic, that was picked up by Del Rey. It's getting republished this year. Book coming out every couple months, but it's being republished in paperback. And I've had readers be like, hey, is it going to come out in hardback? And I just try and be really honest and say, it depends on how the paperback does. And I don't say that to try and be like, ha ha ha, you have to buy multiple formats,
Right.
cackling in the background. It's just a fact of how the industry works. Or, readers will be like, why don't you send out more arcs? And just being like, here is the breakdown of how physical arcs, whether it's me bankrolling them and paying for them and to ship and print, or whether it's even a publisher, it's the same kind of calculus of, you are sending, for every arc that you send out, there is a cost associated with it. And you have to think, oh, is this cost coming back? So that transparency has always been important to me. I've always... I have, that being said, I've been really transparent about, myself, my writing process as an author, my writing process, the industry. But I do have like hard lines for myself with my family and like personal things. And that's something that I've just always, one, because I mean, a multitude of reasons that most people can probably imagine of, you never want to put someone out there without their consent. And I never know fully what my loved ones consent to when it comes to their information being out there at any given time. There's also, the safety component for myself and people I care about. Wish that wasn't the case, but it is. But then it's also too a preservation of space. Like I need a space where I am not being Elise Kova, the author. I need somewhere that I feel like is held sacred and held separate. And that's another reason why, I've always kind of had those lines, even before I named them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like, I don't post my daughter because she's like, I mean, she's 11 now, so she can kind of say what she wants, but she also doesn't really fully understand what that means to be. I used to call, when I first started publishing, I called my then boyfriend, now husband, I called him P-Charm, which was not that he, not because he was, I used to always say it's not because I think he's like Prince Charming in a Disney sense, in the like, it's that I've never met a man who could break into song and dance, like in like completely mundane situations like he can. And so I always called him P-Charm, and I just kind of like kept them out of it, because if they don't, I chose this life. This is my career, right? And this is what I want to do. And as they go, like, my daughter wanted to do a podcast episode with me because she like loves Stranger Things, and like before it was Percy Jackson, and she's like a big reader and a big storyteller. And we kind of like, I kind of went back and forth a little, and I was like, yeah, like we can do this, right? But I don't know if I would ever post it publicly. Like, I would maybe send it to grandma, right?
Yeah.
Let her see it until she's older. Like, it's so I totally understand those kinds of things. And also, I do feel like there's an aspect of living your life publicly. Like, I consider authorship to be sort of like D-list celebrity. Like, we're just like way down. Like, some people know who we are, and we put stuff out there publicly. But we're not like, we still can hide behind our books. Like, we still have that ability to like remain a little bit anonymous if we wanted to. Like you said, it's important to have your space where you can just be your own person, right? Because I can only handle so much of hearing people tell me what they think about me, and about my stories and my life and my craft and whatnot. Like, just to be able to go and live is also, like, just as a person is a really kind of good way to sort of protect your mental health in that aspect as well.
Because there is a performative aspect to it, I think. And I don't think that has to be, I feel like a lot of people view that with a veneer of insincerity or like not being fully authentic.
Right.
But there is sort of that element of, I might have stronger opinions on things than I post online on my official accounts for a
Mm-hmm.
multitude of reasons. And, or I might be having a terrible day, but it- it's just one of those things where I'm like, it's not what I want to put out there, so I don't. And I think that, not that I am not myself when I am functioning in a authorial capacity, like publicly, but it is a refined version of myself. It is an edited version of myself where it
Yeah.
is my beliefs, it is my essence, it is me, but
Mm-hmm.
there's that little bit of like, okay, do I really want to say this? Do I really want to say this that way? Do I really want to put this out there, whatever this is? And when you don't have it, that's exhausting. That's a low
Mm-hmm.
grade exhaustion to constantly be like that, which is again why I'm like, all right, I want to have my little space that isn't touched by this public persona world.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's a job too, in a
Yeah.
sense, right? Like when I go to the library, if I'm having a bad day, I can't be mean to people when they come in, like, and they don't want to hear my opinions on certain things, and they want like the book that they came in for, or but and there's so much it is performative, and it's like what is the word I'm looking for? Kind of like a give and take, right? Like I'm just thinking
Mm-hmm.
about at the library. Some people do want to come in and they want to talk about, like, one of the things that I didn't realize, this is just kind of a side tangent, but when I got the job at the library, one thing that I didn't realize, the interviewer was so keen on like um privacy, right?
Mm,
Confidentiality. And I was like, this is a library. People are coming in to like get books or whatever. But I know things about people in my town, that they haven't even told the public because they're getting books. They're like, whether it's a
yeah.
diagnosis of something or a struggle that they're having, all of a
Or a
sudden they're like,
lifestyle, or yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so then they're getting these books on it, and then it really kind of made sense to me that, like, yes, there is, depending on who I'm speaking to, there is this like differing levels of intimacy or vulnerability or whatever, and you have to be able to, and that's kind of where I feel like the performative aspect comes from, right? Like you're interacting with readers, and you have to really be able to read that energy and be able to know like how much of yourself you can put into it, how much you can trust people, how much they, like, the people are putting trust in you, and you kind of have to like be able to move through that, and it is extremely tiring, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And again, I don't mind it, and I also
Hmm.
don't want to like this hard, even though it is hard, is so much less hard than
Yeah.
90% of jobs out there. Like it's not a woe is me, but it is a fact at the same
Yes.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's okay. Like boundaries are super important, and especially online where there are some struggles with parasocial relationships, and folks getting to like, I'll take it away from the authorship for a second, and go towards like the TV show stuff, right? Like when all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of people speculating whether the actors are dating each other in real life because they had such good chemistry on screen, and you're like, you don't know those people. Those people are totally different than what they play on TV, right? And authors kind of get that a little bit in like I personally had a reader who was very angry with me and told me to like do things to myself that I won't
Mm,
say, because
I'm so sorry.
yeah, because two of the characters in one of my books didn't like play out the way that they had wanted them to, and I was like, that was a shocking moment for me. That was one of my moments where I was kind of like, oh yeah, no, this isn't all just fun and wonderful, everyone, kumbaya, we all love each other kind of situation. Like, they're like, people are coming into my space and saying horrible things to me about me as a person because they were mad that a character made a decision that they didn't agree with or something like that. And so those were like moments where I was like, oh, okay, I have to start putting up like a little bit of
Yeah.
boundaries. And for you, because you have kind of like grown, um and you have like a pretty big following and stuff like that, are there any kind of things that you've had to do in that space? Like, we don't have to get into particulars, but like, to protect yourself or your family or your mental health or anything like that? Like, do you have a process that you go through on how you decide what to share or what not to share?
I think at this point it's so second nature, but I think that second nature aspect comes from, there have been times where I've shared something and it's never been like an overshare or anything.
Hmm.
Like I haven't said anything there. I've been like, "Oh, here's my home address. Enjoy." Like
Right.
nothing to that extreme. Um but there have been times where I've shared an anecdote about my life and I'll go, "I don't like the way that sits with me after the fact." And
Hmm.
I think that sort of gut feeling is what you listen to in those moments. Again, it's never been something bad enough that, like, it's keeping me up at night of like, "Oh, why did I
Hmm.
say that? And now I feel like I'm in danger," but more of a, "Okay, that's gonna inform how I act in the future." Like this feels a little funny, but I've fortunately I'm knocking on wood, and I hope the mic picks that up so I keep the good
I'll keep
energy.
it.
But, I'm knocking on wood that I this doesn't happen, but I haven't had to do anything, like, extreme so far.
Mm.
And by extreme, I mean, like, I haven't had to move houses. I haven't had to get any kind of legal enforcement involved or anything like that. Like
Hmm.
like, I've had a couple uncomfortable moments, but
Right.
nothing that rose to the level of, "Oh, I feel in danger in some kind of
Right.
way." And to any crazies listening to this, that's not a challenge. Please don't.
Yeah, exactly. It was not an invitation.
No, no, let's keep it that way. That's the
Yeah.
goal. Keep the
Yeah.
streak going.
Yeah. I do find that there is a certain level of, like, being somebody who loves tarot and loves, like, the woo woo side of life. I also think that there's a lot of energy around these kinds of things, and you can sort of see. There's a few authors, like you're included in it. Another one that I would say would be Devney Perry. Like, just any of the, like, there's just such a level of professionalism that even if there is a little bump in the road or a little bit of drama or a little bit of something, like somebody has a thought and opinion and tries to, like, get on the mob, there's just this level of kind of like, this is my space. And people seem to respect it energetically. Like,
Well, thank you. I mean, I don't want to say that I'm immune if everyone decided to grab their pitchforks and come after me tomorrow. I doubt I would be immune to it,
right.
but I do think also there is, and maybe this is part of it. I do love the woo woo space, but for those listening who maybe aren't that, I do think there is something though of um self-fulfilling prophecies, and there's a psychological component, I think, to it, where if you go out seeking drama and if you go
Hmm.
out engaging with drama, then you are looking for that and you're maybe more likely to engage with it. And I'm not here to victim blame or to say that, bad things can't happen to good people sort of thing or excuse, but at the same time I also think that if you don't hold your boundaries, people will eventually take advantage of that, or if you do act in such a way that could inspire the concept of turnabout as fair play, there's that too, because unfortunately there are disingenuous people out there,
Hmm.
and people who for one reason or another might feel a certain way and act a certain way, whether they realize how they're acting or not. And yeah, like I think it's one of those that you do have to be careful, but even someone who is the most careful can still fall victim to something.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that there's a tipping point as well. Like, the more people that are paying attention to you, the larger the probability of something. Like, every single author, celebrity, everybody who has made it past a certain point has been quote unquote canceled for
Yeah.
something. Right? It's just inevitable because we're all humans and we all have parts of our personality that are like, you can't be for everyone. You can't, no, not everyone in the world is going to like you, and that's totally fine. But like, as you kind of get bigger, the probability of some of these things happening. But I do find, like, the other side of the point that you made too was this. I have noticed that sometimes people are really worried. And it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in that way when you're like, and again, it could be energetically, psychologically, any of those avenues. But when you kind of are constantly ruminating on something, if you're like, oh, I don't want to get canceled. I don't want to get like, what if I didn't write this right? What if this is problematic? What if this is not okay? What if somebody's going to be mad that I said this or did this? Then there's just this like this rumination on it that's sort of, can sometimes not bring it on, but then you're looking for it. You're looking for the people who are doing the canceling. You're looking for the people who are starting the drama instead of just like staying your lane and doing what it is that you do, and knowing that like, because I worked with one author once who was really afraid, was like, what if I get it wrong? And I was like, the fact that you're worried about getting it wrong is probably a reason why you're not going to get it wrong, because people who are super problematic they do it with their whole heart, right? Like they do not think that they're doing anything wrong. They just go through it, right? And just do their thing. Whereas if you're like, I really want to be sensitive to this topic or to this idea or this group of people or whatever, like then you're more likely to look and research and do kind of like a better job of sort of balancing it out.
And I, just to kind of expand on that, like I definitely have had a lot of nights of anxiety of, what if this all comes crashing down because of thing that happens, whatever thing is, like you can pick something. And I'm
could
sure
be anything,
I've
really
probably been anxious about it at some point or another. But I will also say that, I think that, and this kind of goes to your point of what you're saying of if you're worried about it, you're probably trying to take steps not to do it. And I think that, there is something to be said for if you have that fear about something. I'm gonna butcher this, but I heard a therapist say at one point, something to the effect of like, guilt itself isn't bad because guilt is informing that you have acted outside of your moral compass. Now, it can be bad if you take it to a level of extreme anxiety or you're feeling guilt over things that, maybe are in line with your moral compass, but you've been told to feel like I'm not trying to, there's a lot of nuance into something like this, but I just say that as a, it could also be something like there have been things that I've been nervous about, how they might be received in my work from that perspective of, did I do it good enough? And I think that, there is something to be said of like, if I am feeling that anxious, then maybe the answer is I didn't. And that's something for me to learn and work on and look for the places in which I could have done better and then try and do better on the next book.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we all are products of our environments and our circumstances and stuff like that. So like, when we're, and that's one of the things I love about writing is that you can really kind of dig in to different perspectives, right? Like the idea that I always get a good kick out of folks who think that everything you write about is like autobiographical. Right.
Yes.
And then you say something autobiographical and they're like, that didn't happen. That's so far fetched. And you're like, okay, whatever. But like to be able to dig into these other characters, I do that. And I love your opinion on this. When I am writing a character, I really like to sort of try and get into the mindset of that character and like and really see the world from a different perspective to challenge myself as a person as well as a writer, right? Like so when you are creating your characters or when you're working through things like backstory or trauma or anything that your characters are going through, what is your kind of process of handling those things?
I think that, my high level process is I always have the belief that everyone is the main character of their own story. And so even if I have the main character from a narratively technical perspective of the novel already set, this side character or the enemy or, whoever else, in their mind, they are going through their story. and they are the main character of that story. And so I frame it from that perspective to really be like almost like a mini exercise. If I was rewriting the story from their point of view, how would they feel about these different things? And I don't take it too far, because if I did, I wouldn't have any time to write the actual story.
Yeah.
But I think that when you start to look at it from that perspective, you really automatically begin to get into a lot of those histories of that character, because why they're doing what they're doing is informed by what they believe and what they've experienced and what they stand for and what they want to get out of any certain situation. So I think there's very much that of, you know, trying to get into the main character's head by really being like, if this story was from their perspective, what would it look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. It just makes it more interesting to read too. Like it's never, especially in fantasy, it's never really fun to read about a bad guy who's just bad because he's bad.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I actually like I have somewhat of a counter opinion to that,
Oh,
I'll be
okay.
honest. I love a tortured villain, and I love a villain with a backstory. But I feel like in the past, I don't know, I would say 5 years, give or take a couple years. I feel like there has been such a push of every villain needs to have a backstory.
Mm,
Like to the extent that, you know, every villain needs to have this like tragic explanation, and they're not actually as bad as you think they are. And like and I think, you know, you can look at it as a response to, if you look of sort of fantasy of yesteryear, there were a lot more characters that were evil because they were evil.
right.
And I think that, you know, I miss that a little bit in some cases, in some scenarios. Not to say that I don't want fleshed out characters, but I think that there are just sometimes bad people.
Yeah.
And I think that there is it's this own catharsis just to be like, no, he's not misunderstood. He's not, like, maybe he had these things that happened to him, which, okay, sad, but doesn't rise to the level of let's kill half the continent or something like that.
Yes.
Like, and I think that that's one thing that I've kind of been feeling lately, of just I want sort of these more evil characters that are just like, yeah, they have a backstory and they have some explanations of why they are the way they are, but they went from 0 to 60 toward crazy town in like
Right.
for no good reason, kind of thing, because that is just the way they are. So I think that I do like to have space for a little bit of simplicity, of some people can just be really good people, and sometimes some people are just like, I don't even want to try to explain away what you're doing. Like, there is no explanation for what you're
Yeah.
doing. You're just doing horrible things.
Yeah, fair. And I do actually totally agree with you on that. I think there's that the current obsession with enemies to lovers, I think, is where that kind of stems from too, because this idea that the bad guy is the guy that the main character ends up falling in love with or something like that. So yeah, I do think that sometimes the big bad is evil. And but I do want to know why, even if it's something really mundane, like he just power hungry. Like
Yeah.
I'm currently working on like a Robin Hood vampire book, and the like Prince
Ooh,
John.
like the sound of that.
Yeah, well, I kind of say it's like uh it's gender bent Robin Hood meets My Little Pony. with
Fine.
vampires and
Okay.
dragons. So like the Robin Hood characters are women and they have a sisterhood, and they're a vampire. I'm Romanian. And so it's very steeped in like my grandma, when I grew up hearing all the stories and the folklore and stuff like that. So it's very steeped in that world. But then I came up with the idea when my daughter was young, and we watched nothing but My Little Pony forever. And and so I was like, oh, the dragons, they're also like friends, and you know, like friendship is magic.
Yeah.
Anyways, the Prince John character, the bad guy, he's just power hungry. He
Yeah.
just wants power, and it corrupts him and corrupts him and corrupts him. But like as I'm writing it, actually trying to be very careful that I'm like not making him sympathetic. Like you were saying, because I really don't want any reader to be like, "Ooh, he's, you
We'll
know,
say
like
they still
they
will be.
will."
Someone
Yeah.
will. Someone absolutely. I think it was a Dawn with the Wolf Knight. There is a king in a Dawn with the Wolf Knight, and he is a guy that thinks consent is optional kind of energy. He's not a
Yeah.
good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Not romanticized at all. Like manipulative, narcissistic, power hungry, like not a good character. And I still have people being like, I kind of wish she had. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
don't finish that sentence. We
I
don't
could
need to go
fix
down
him.
that road. I can fix him. I'm like, honey, you're looking at red flags and you just see a circus.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, but writing
I mean,
those,
I agree with you. I'm just saying there will be that reader. And I'm sure they're probably listening with pride going, I am that reader. I am that reader for sure.
Yeah, I don't care what you say. I could fix him.
I
Absolutely.
could fix him. Challenge accepted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I do like myself a good enemies to lover story too, though.
Yeah, I mean, Arcana Academy is enemies. Most of my stories have some shade of enemies to lovers, like written into them, because it's such good tension. It is such good tension.
Yeah, it really is. I did a rivals to lovers one. It's I want to move into talking about Arcana Academy. But they're circus performers and they're from rival circuses, and it's my book that has tarot magic in it. So that's why we got to get into it. But yeah, the rivals to lovers, I think, is as far as I've been able to go. I've been it's really hard for me because I'm like, I don't know if it's just my own personal thing, but when they get into real enemy territory, I'm like, he just tried to kill you. Like, why do you like him? I don't get it. I love reading about it, but when I write it, I have such a psychological brain. Like I'm just always really looking for those. Like I read psychology books, not craft books.
Yeah.
Like, and to like really get into it. And so I'm just like, sometimes I have to suspend my own disbelief as I'm writing to be like, oh, okay, just let it go, Allison. Like
the power of abs compels.
Exactly. I got to set aside my own thing and do it. But
well, and I tell authors all the time who are writing enemies to lovers, I'll be like, I think you need to have, everyone has their own lines of how the enemies can be, and there's no right or wrong answer. But like, right. For me, using Arcana Academy as an example, because that is an enemies to lovers story. It is definitely a lot more of an antagonistic relationship from his side. She perceives him as her enemy. She believes that he killed her mother. And I think and I say believes, and this is a light spoiler. But you find it out pretty quickly, and I don't mind sharing this. So I guess if you are sensitive to spoilers, just skip forward like a minute or two. But he didn't actually kill her mother. He didn't actually put her in prison. It didn't go down how she thought it went down. And I won't spoil more than that. But and so for me, that was like a line that I was like, if he actually killed her mother, I don't think that I, as a reader or a writer, could suspend my disbelief to be like, well, he murdered my mom in cold blood, but your six-pack doesn't quit. So I guess, like, I just think that is, and I think we all have those lines. And for some people, it doesn't exist. The line does not exist. I have heard of many a dark romance that I'm like, sure, I'm not going to yuck someone's yum. But I think that is something with enemies to lovers, where when you're deciding how much of enemies they have to be and in what way. And I think for me, the main thing of enemies to lovers is there are those lines, and it's usually also like one of them perceives the other to be a lot more of the enemy than the other one does. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's very similar in my circus fantasy. it's very much that she believes like she has amnesia and she wakes up on this train, this circus train, and she doesn't remember. I love writing tropes that everyone hates. It's my favorite thing to do. And I like to try and like dig super deep into them. So my circus fantasy was basically an ode to my recovery from PTSD and the idea of, and I use the idea of amnesia and memory fragmentation. So she remembers things, but not in the right order and not in the right way. And then she starts kind of reliving these past moments, but they start coming out in her magic in the present. So like she'll have this flashback and then she'll come to and like she leveled an entire train car with her magic kind of thing. And so it starts really haunting her present as well as her past. But yeah, it's very similar. She believes that the main male character is the one who has done all of the bad things to her. And then they like move through her memories as she remembers what actually happened and what his role in it actually was. And then, so yeah, it's one of those, because I also do really love a good he fell first kind of thing where like she hates him, but he's just like pining for her in the corner. Like,
yeah, that is very Clara and Kaelis coded from Arcana as well. Like he is definitely a fall first.
Oh, I love that. So tell me more about it. I have it. I read like the first 2 chapters. I got it at my independent bookstore.
Yay! We love supporting local independent bookstores.
We do.
So Arcana Academy, I'll give kind of my spiel, my overall, because I know you'll have fabulous questions to dig in. It is set in a world where magic flows through specially inked tarot cards. And this is highly regulated by the king in this world. And to be someone who uses this tarot magic, you have to go through the titular Arcana Academy. Our main character, Clara, is in prison because she was using this magic illegally. She had not gone through the academy. She had not been placed with one of the noble clans and given permission to use it. And so she starts out the book in prison, and chapter 1 starts, as you know, since you read it, but chapter 1 starts with the prince that she believes put her there and murdered her mother and upholds this horrible system, arriving to let her know that he decided to be executed. She escapes only to find out that the escape was orchestrated basically by him because he wants to use her power because she has a special power. He wants to use it to steal a legendary force from his father, the king, to use it for himself. And of course, she's like, well, if I have all of these special skills that you need from me to steal from the king to get this legendary power, why would I turn around and give it to you? So she agrees because she plans on taking it for herself. And then to keep up appearances, she is enrolled into Arcana Academy, and he declares her his bride-to-be. So that way no one asks too many questions because he is a very feared individual in the kingdom. And so if she is associated with him, people probably won't probe too deeply. And so begins kind of this novel that ends up being part dark academia, part tarot magic, part heist with found family, and yes, enemies to lovers.
Oh, I like that. How did you come up with the tarot? Can you talk a little bit more about the magic system? I love tarot. So
yeah. So I first learned how to read tarot when I was like 7 or 8, and it's been a part of my life ever since, to varying degrees, on and off. And I knew from the moment like I kind of became an author that I would love to write a tarot-based magic system one day, but a magic system does not a novel make. And so I sat on it for a really long time, just kind of thinking about it. And I think another part of my hesitation was I knew I wanted to do something ambitious with the magic system. And I don't know if this is the same for you, but sometimes I have ideas that I look at and I go, I'm not ready to write that yet. Yes. I'm just not skilled enough to do it yet. And that was a bit how I felt about this magic system in this world, because I knew I wanted it to be more involved. And the way that I achieved that kind of depth was every single card is a different spell. So in Arcana Academy, you have inking, which is how you make the cards, and every arcanist, people with magic, inks their cards in their own fashion and style, and their own skill level allows them to use different cards. And then so you have inking, you have reading, which is kind of like our world, reading for the future, and then you have wielding, which is where you cast a card and every card has a unique spell basically attached to it. And so I wanted to have a magic system that meant that every tarot card had a unique spell, which was a lot to kind of navigate and think about.
Yeah, there's 78 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There are quite a few.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. I do love that. And to go back to that's my dragon, my Robin Hood dragon book is that book for me. I wrote the first version of it 10 years ago, and I was like, it's not there. It's not ready. It isn't right. And then now I'm back in it because now I feel like my skills have caught up to it. So I totally agree with that. Just as a side note, in case anyone's wondering, like, oh, I want to write this story and I just don't, like, I keep stalling out on it. I sometimes think that, like, sometimes we procrastinate for reasons.
Yes.
And put things off for reasons. So is there in this system, if you have all of these different things for the cards, is there a difference between like the major and the minors?
So there are Arcana Academy teaches the minor cards because the major cards don't exist. Okay. I'm heavily air quoting for anyone listening.
So you must stay tuned.
No, it is a spoiler, but I think it's not a surprising one. But the major arcana are believed not to exist in this world. Okay. So they are kind of their own sub magic system.
So the second one is coming out.
Yes, Prince of Swords.
Okay. What can you kind of tell us about that one that isn't spoilery? Nothing.
So the second,
read the first one.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Pick up the first one. No. The second one starts off immediately after the ending of the first one. I mean, like you could read the first one and then immediately crack the second one, and it's like a continuation, pretty much. Okay. And part of that is because the first about 15,000 words or so of the second book was originally on the first book. Oh. And I kept, as I was going through edits, I kept being like, this feels like there's two endings. This feels like there's like sort of these two stopping points. And it's almost like what happens in those 15 chapters. It felt like it was the first start of the momentum of something new. And that end point just didn't sit right with me. And so I finally cut it from book one. But that meant, this was originally, I don't remember. I'm like flipping through a copy right now because I'm curious. Okay, so chapter 57 is where 57 is where book one ends. Book chapter 1 of book 2 would have been chapter 58 originally.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it kind of like really picks up and hits the ground running.
Okay. Is there a cliffhanger in the first book?
There is.
Okay. I love cliffhangers. Like I love everything that everyone else hates. I don't know. I just think it's fun. But that's good though, because if someone hasn't read it, the next one is coming out very soon.
Yes, July 21st of 2026, so this year.
Okay. And I want to talk a little bit about the like kind of the building of these characters and of this world. Where did these two kind of ideas align, where you felt like, okay, I'm ready to write the tarot magic system and these are the people who are perfect for this world? Which came first?
I think for Arcana Academy, like I said, the magic definitely came first. And then the magic really inspired a lot of the world, because for me, when I'm world building, I think of these sort of nexuses of power. So where does power sit? And I think from it a perspective of hard power, like military, magic, that sort of thing, as well as soft power of economics and religion and those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
Nobility kind of sits on the intersection of hard power and soft power because they do control usually the means of hard power. But you get what I'm saying of
Yeah.
like the structure of the idea that this society just goes, yeah, okay, that makes sense that he's noble born or something like that. There's a soft side of that too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for me, the biggest thing that I was thinking of is I like magic systems that have a limitation.
Mm-hmm.
And originally I was thinking in Arcana Academy that the limitation would be that the cards would actually be tattooed onto the individuals.
Oh.
And because of that, they could only have so many cards on their bodies because it would be a lot of magic and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But I thought about that and I'm like, I feel like I have all of this cool magic system and I'm limiting it to what you would actually see on the page. And so I'm like, okay, I want them to have a deck, but I need another way to limit it. So that's where inking came in. And I promise I'm going to get to your
Yeah,
question, but
for sure.
all of the background makes sense. So I was thinking about inking and I'm like, okay, that's going to be my limitation. You have to have special materials to ink these cards.
Right.
And of course, if you have special materials required to ink these cards that create large amounts of power for people, people are going to control the means of production because that is just what humans do. You are going to consolidate power around individuals who will say, this is mine now. And because it's mine, you got to listen to me. And so that then really began to create this world with like these noble clans that were feuding in kind of like a warring clans period that then led to this rise of this king. So I kind of was thinking, all right, I want to sit with royalty. I want to have, one character be from sort of this kind of born into the system and benefiting from the system. And then I want to have this character that is born outside of the system to really give readers a little bit of perspective of both sides of that coin. And then when I was thinking about that, I was like, okay, there's that sort of interesting tension between them. There's that sketching of the making of my enemies to lovers, because if she's outside of the system, he's inside of the system. He's helping uphold the system that she hates, that's imprisoned her. And then I began thinking about it from the perspective of um these two characters. I want to have as much sort of dichotomy and tension between them as I could. So Kaelis, our prince, is really defined by the past and is looking to correct mistakes of the past, and he's really driven and yeah, defined by that. Whereas Clara, our female main character, she is very forward looking. She does have these things in the past, like her mother's murder, that impacted her. Of course, like it's not all one thing for either character, but her motivation is to build a better future. It's not
Right.
she has an element of vengeance because of course she does. Her mother
Yeah.
was murdered. Of course she wants that. But she also wants it equally, if not more, of like, I want to make a system that's fair for people. I want to make a system where, people's parents aren't murdered, where people aren't put in prison just because they want to use magic that they actually have. And so that is another aspect of their characters that as I was sort of thinking about this world, that built out for like, these are the people that I need to sit with, because Kaelis is this window into the past through his lineage and his nobility and all of that, and Clara is this force into the future because she has no ties to the past. Her ties to the past in book one are shattered basically at the start of book one. She has very little to stop her from being like, I want to go forward. And the people who are from the past with her are like, yeah, we're with you. We want to build this new world.
Okay. Do you tend to go with characters who kind of like, does Clara know a lot about the world, or are we kind of on the journey with her learning about the magic? Or is it like, does that make sense?
Yeah, she knows a lot about the world. She comes in on page one very aware of everything that is going on. And I kind of, maybe this is I like something that everyone hates. I like a fantasy book that I feel lost in for the first act of the book, where I am like, I am going, I don't know what that means, but I'm sure I'll figure it out by the end of the book.
Yeah.
That is what I like in fantasy. And granted, I don't aim to confuse my readers. That's not
Right.
my goal. But at the same time, it's like I think there are moments where I'm like, I'm going to make sure you're not lost, but I'm not going to hold your hand either and walk you through every little aspect of something. So, kind of trying to strike that balance.
Yeah, for sure. There's a difference between curiosity and confusion, right? Like not knowing what's
Yes.
going on isn't always confusing. Sometimes you're like, wait a minute, I got to keep reading because I have to know why that happened, right? Instead of being
Yeah.
like, what the actual is happening right now. And those are two very different feelings. Yeah, I really enjoy that as well. Trusting the reader. I think readers are very smart and they
Yeah.
can figure out a lot. And I don't know if this is like part of your book at all, but it just came into my head and I want to know your thoughts on it. The idea of predictability. So it was something that I saw not too long ago. And there was this big debate over this book as to whether or not it was good or not because it was predictable. And the readers could tell what was coming. And then the way that I was kind of thinking about it is readers also really like to be smart and to feel smart. So there's this, do you think about any of that at all when you're writing your stories? Like letting your readers kind of dropping those hints pretty aggressively so that your readers can figure it out like a page or two before your main character so that they could be like, ha, I knew it. Or like your kind of thoughts on, from a writer's perspective, on predictability and whether or not it's a tool that you can actually use when writing.
I mean, I think ooh, I might be crossing into hot water territory when I
Oh.
say this. I think we saw the dangers of trying to avoid predictability at all cost in the final seasons of Game of Thrones. Because
Okay.
if you hear some of the interviews, I could be wrong. I don't know these people. I don't know the writers. I don't know the
Right.
showrunners personally. There's my caveat. But
Yeah.
there was this almost feeling of like we wanted to create these shock values and we wanted to
Mhm.
create these like oh my god moments kind of thing. And it felt like they were pursuing those at the cost of the story. It was almost like it
Mm.
felt like they were farming everything that was on Reddit and everything that was online of people speculating and going, what's the one thing no one's guessed would happen? Let's do that. And
Right.
I think that you ended up with choices that were fundamentally unsatisfying because
Mhm.
they didn't make sense as to how the story was built. And I think that I love to shock and surprise readers, but if
Of
I
course.
did my job right as an author, I view it as when it happens, the reader is shocked initially, but then they have a moment where they go, I should have seen this coming the entire
Yeah.
time. But if I had to pick one side of the line to fall on, because that is a hard line to fall
Mhm.
to strike a balance of, I would rather, generally speaking, have things fall on the side of maybe it is predictable if you're a careful reader, but that to me is just good storytelling. Things
Mhm.
are foreshadowed. And it is to me, it is an element of the payoff. The
Yeah.
setup is the foreshadowing. The payoff is what happens because of the foreshadowing. And so if you disconnect those, in my mind, there is an element that you are cheapening the payoff. And
Mhm.
that's not to say that you can't have things come out of left field or you can't have things be shocking or cuz life is sometimes like that. Sometimes
Yeah.
you just get a call and it's like, "Oh, well that completely changed the trajectory of my week because
Mhm.
I couldn't have seen that coming." But I think you have to be careful with that as a writer too because it can so often and so easily feel like, well, there's a deus ex machina, or oh, there is the pacing was dragging, so that's just a trite plot point that the author clearly threw in just to make it more interesting. So I think
Mhm.
that you can have some of those non-foreshadowed things, but they have to be kind of more careful. Um,
They have to
my two
make
cents.
sense in hindsight,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I think I in hindsight or once you have more information, because
Mhm.
I think usually which is a form of hindsight, but I guess what I mean is like I consider good foreshadowing of, like I said, you have the thing happen and then you go, oh, I should have seen it. These things happened. I think when you have a true unexpected moment, usually it's because you're being told a story from a limited point of view and you don't see what those other characters are doing off screen. But
Mm-hmm.
later on, you might get more information that might make you go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
of course the army showed up then. It wasn't
Yeah.
a deus ex machina. It was all of these other things that make sense for that character to be doing. I just didn't have all the information.
Yeah. And I do love myself a good tension moment, right? Like, which
Yeah.
I find if you use predictability as a tool, then you can like, for example, when you realize that he's loved her all along and she has no clue, and you get these like little snippets and you see these little things, and then for like a chapter or two, as a reader, you kind of get to be like, I know something you don't know, kind of thing, right?
Yes.
And then, but then it can get to the point where you're like, oh my God, you idiot. How do you not see this? Like it's like, there is a balance. There is a way to kind of like use these things. And I also do find that sometimes these twists can be like a juicy little reward for your rereaders, right?
I love that. I love it when a book hits different the second time around.
Mm-hmm. And then you see all the things that you missed in the first one. And then you get to be like, I know something you don't know, right? Like for the whole kind of time. And it makes the second read through kind of, and those are, is that something that you ever think of in your like rewarding your readers with some of these little things? Like for me personally, when I write for myself. I write the story that I want to tell, but then when I go in and I edit it, I look at it from the reader's perspective. I'm like, ooh, there's some juicy like friends to lovers going on here. I'm gonna amp that up. I'm gonna like make it more, and I'm gonna drop in some Easter eggs of different things for like almost as a reward for the readers who are paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But I also think that's just fun. For me, that's part of the fun as of an
That's true.
author too, of like I want readers to pick up at it on it, but even if they don't, it's like that feeling again of the when they get to it, even subconsciously, they're gonna go, "Oh, no, that makes sense. Of course that's
Mm-hmm.
the case."
Mm-hmm. And obviously you can't say what they are because we're not a spoiler podcast. However, do we get some of those? Do we get
Oh,
them?
absolutely.
Okay.
There are scenes in Prince of Swords that I wanted to write from starting Arcana Academy,
Mm,
but I just had to wait to get to them on pins.
yes.
Because I think the thing that excites me about a trilogy is I actually think the second book in a trilogy has to do the most heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being is because I think the second book has an obligation to answer all of the questions that the first book asked, but answer it in a way that it creates more questions or problems that are going to carry you to the ultimate resolution in book 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to have fun with all of these revelations of like, here's why this thing it happened in book 1. But also, now that you know this is a problem that we got to deal with in book 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, book 2, like there is a lot of pressure on a book 2. And you always like hear about the dreaded book 2 slump and like that kind of stuff, right? And so like that's very inspiring to also to know that that's your feelings on a book 2 as well.
And I think it's like I look at a series and I'm going to tangent here, forgive me.
Okay, go for it. I love
But
tangents.
I I look at a series as every individual book has a story arc, but the series itself has a story arc, and that story arc is spread out in however many books that the series is. So, for example, if you're writing a 5-book series, book 1 ends act 1, book 2 is act 2A, book 2 and ends with the midpoint, book 2 is act 2B. Book 4, if you're doing 4 books, like is the finale, is act 3. If you're doing 5 books, the midpoint falls at book 3. So if you're doing a trilogy, the midpoint is book 2. And I think I'm probably super biased in how jazzed I am about this, because I think one of the things that I had a hardest time wrapping my head around as a writer and from a craft perspective was the purpose of a midpoint. And I'm sure there's going to be someone listening to this that's like, and it might be you, that's like, a midpoint is the most obvious purpose in a book. But like for me, it was the act one made sense. Act
Yeah.
one was like exciting, and the inciting incident made sense. And even the first part of act two made sense of like, we're breaking into this new world. And then it was almost like I would struggle for the longest time where I would just be like muddling about in the last like 2/3 of act two, because I just saw it as a lead up to the climax. And once I began understanding the purpose of a midpoint narratively and what it does, and started thinking about a book not necessarily just as a 3-act structure, but a sort of 4-act structure in the sense of act 1, act 2A, act 2B, act 3, that completely changed my perspective on something like a second book in a trilogy, because that second book is the midpoint. That second book is the transformative element that is going to propel you into the climax that you'll see in book 3 of the ultimate overall narrative that the series is telling. And so that is why like I get so jazzed up about a book 2 in a trilogy, because it is something that clicked for me from a craft perspective fairly recently in my career, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah, it happened embarrassingly late for me as well. I won't say how many books I wrote before I realized how, like, what you actually do at the midpoint. I was like, sure, shock in the middle, but then I really didn't understand what the point of that shock was, or what, like, because you go from reacting to acting. You go from, like, from things happening to choices being made. And of course, characters have to make choices all throughout. Like, books are no fun to read if things just keep happening to the main character and they don't have any agency. But like when you have a character and they're in this new world, they're learning this new thing, they're in a new society or status or class or whatever it is that they're entering into, and then they're just kind of like, things are sort of coming at them and they don't really know. But then there's always that, like, that middle point where they realize, and they're like, okay, now, like, it's almost the, like, shit gets real moment. Right?
Well, and it's that shit gets real moment. It's that, moment of exposing something. The fact that the midpoint is the catalyst that propels you to the climax. It is not. And it's like, I think for me, I always thought of the climax as like the thing. And now it's like almost the midpoint is the thing. And the climax is just like the natural consequence of the midpoint. And so it's still dramatic. It's still bombastic. But at the same time, it's like it wouldn't exist without the midpoint being there. And that was just something that, so satisfying. And I think I will say also, like, if you're an author who's listening, who's maybe like earlier on in the process, and you're like, wait a second, I don't know if I fully understand the midpoint. One, that's totally okay. Go read some books. You'll figure it out. We all do. But two, I think it is, to what you were saying of like, people who tell stories and engage with stories begin to develop an innate sense for them. And so before I understood a midpoint, I had midpoints in my stories, but understanding mechanically, narratively what they're doing has just helped me make them so much stronger and also a lot less pain in editing. A lot less pain.
So much less pain. Oh my goodness. Are you a discovery writer, or are you a planner? A little bit of both.
I'm a little bit of both. I have
Same.
to know those kind of like main story beats, because again, I think if I don't have those, I'm lost. I usually have some scenes that are clear in my head, but I don't necessarily know where they're gonna. I might have a vague idea of like, that's a very act 1 scene, or that's probably closer to the end. But I don't try and outline for book 1s. I like to discovery write a bit. I like to meet the characters and the world organically, and leave a lot of blank space for me to be a little impulsive. But currently, for later books, like book 2 and book 3 of Arcana Academy, I outlined meticulously. So, and I think that's just the difference of now I have all of these plot characters and plot threads that I can't drop any.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point, that you kind of have to, um, each story, I find in my process anyways, that each story kind of requires something slightly different in order to make sure that the story kind of is told in the way that it needs to be told, to the best of my ability. And being flexible within that process for me is what works the best. I tend to write the emotional scene first. So I don't like, because I find it hard for me. I find it hard to figure out how I need to staircase my way up through the tension, if that
Mm.
makes sense, right? And so I need to know. So if it's a contemporary romance, I need the like that moment where they both say, screw it, like, we're doing this kind of thing. And that
Yeah.
really, or the moment, if they're like where they actually have the, it's not the I love you necessarily moment, but the moment where they see each other's real selves, where they help each other through, their the big emotional aspect of it. And then I can go back and I can kind of like staircase my way up. Because I write quite angsty and
Mm.
and quite not dramatic, I guess, but like the high emotion. My books always have really high emotion. And I find that if I just start out at the beginning, I write myself into a corner all the time, because I'll go
Mm.
like full throttle right out of the gate. Like inciting incident is some big thing. And I'm like, I can't go anywhere from there. Right. Like, so that's kind of how I tend to outline is I write where I need the characters to be. And then I go back to the beginning and I get them there. And
I
so
kind
it's
of
just,
I
sorry?
kind of wish I could do that. like
Mm,
I think I do that a little bit, but it's honestly I have to write the whole damn book. I have to go through the whole thing, but I rewrite, and I tell people this all the time, like I rewrite the first third to half of my books constantly, because it usually isn't until the end that I go, "Oh, I now know the character, the world, the voice, and their story. Now I have to go back and make the first
okay.
half match where I was puttering about, not really knowing what I was doing."
Hmm. I do like, I am on a mission though to have newer writers, or like aspiring writers, get comfortable with rewriting and with
Mm.
deleting words. And
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
love your opinion on this too, but I have worked with, because I do a little bit of like coaching, and I have worked with lots of authors who are just unwilling to move forward in their book because the first 3 chapters aren't perfect, or they just keep going, cycling over. And I have trained myself, and this has not been an easy task for me, but I have trained myself to actually delete things, because I don't believe that deleted words are wasted words. Because when you tell yourself the story in a first draft, um, and then you can't use that draft because it doesn't work, you still are one step closer to understanding the story. But like, to actually see the fear and anxiety that some authors have at actually deleting or getting rid of words or scenes or chapters or whatever is sort of like, so I love the fact that you say that you like rewrite the first third of your book or go back in and heavily edit it over and over again. Um, because I do think that is a part of the process that some newer authors struggle with accepting.
Yeah, I am so I usually don't delete words as in like throw them away. I have a cut document that whenever I delete something, I throw it into the cut document, because sometimes and it is deleted. It is well and
Mhm.
truly deleted from the main draft, but I
Right.
don't throw away the words just because sometimes it's like I'll have like, oh, but that's a really good emotional beat. If I can,
Mhm.
maybe the rest of it isn't necessary, but I like this one line. Maybe I can work
Mhm.
that in somewhere. But no, I think that to me, editing is not the process of adding until you can no longer think of things that you need. editing is the process of taking away until you cannot take anything more away without the story failing. Like every word, every chapter, every moment in your story should serve a functional purpose in like a Jenga tower situation where you can't pick a block to take out and not have the rest of it crumble in some way. And so I think that but you do, and I'm quoting someone, and my brain wants to say it's Eminem, but I'm not 100% sure. I was trying to look it up on the side, and I was fumbling with it. So I don't know. Someone will probably know who the correct person to attribute this. But the quote goes, "You had to go to that place to get to this one," and that's how I feel about a lot of my like rewriting. Is sometimes I have to know what doesn't work to know what will work. And you have to go through the process because writing is a process. It's not just the end product. It is the process of, oh, I have to write all these words and get rid of them. But if I didn't do that, I couldn't write what needs to be written. I couldn't see it. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't feel it. So I am with you. And I'll go back all the way back to Air Awakens. I mentioned that the original drafts of Air Awakens were ballpark of 1 million words, give or take. I cut 500,000 words out of that series. There are 500,000 words of deleted scenes, characters, plot threads, everything across 5 books.
So better be careful with that because they bullied Taylor Swift into releasing the 10-minute version of.
I have deleted scenes of Air Awakens that I think I put it out there and I think it's like 30,000 words of deleted scenes and there is still like so much more.
Yeah.
So much more. But the books are better for it. And I think that's one thing that I tell aspiring authors, new authors just getting started, that it is hard when you have never gone through the process before to trust the process.
Yeah.
Like it's hard when you've never taken a book to its conclusion through all of the stages of editing to suddenly have someone going, well, you need to cut these 20,000 words. And you're going, well, how will I have a story at the end of it? Like you're telling me to gut my story. And it's like, if you've never been there before, it's hard. Like I get it, but I will say, trust the process and do it.
Yeah.
Like do the hard things.
And when you're an aspiring author too, the process is learning your process, right?
Yeah.
Like figuring out how you work best. And like for me personally, my process is that I reinvent my process. Almost every time, like every book comes from a different place, a different structure, a different way of approaching it. Sometimes I have to write in the same place. Sometimes I have to write at the same time. Sometimes I have to write the whole thing in one sitting. Sometimes I have to only write a few words a day. Like I've just accepted that. And now it's so much easier for me to write when I'm like, oh, no, this isn't the place that I think I read somewhere, was it on your website, that you have like different places you write, and if you start writing in one place, you kind of have to end there?
I don't know if it's on my website. I don't know but I have said that before. I have a thing. I don't know if it's a superstition or a weird psychological thing, whatever you want to call it, but the words live somewhere. Sometimes it's a place, sometimes it's on a device. But once I find where the words live, I have to always meet the words at that place. And sometimes they move. Sometimes it's like all of a sudden the words are there and then the words aren't there anymore and I have to find where they've moved to. But like I got I'm working on this 6 Married to Magic book. I'm drafting it, another standalone in that world. And I got one of those bring your own keyboard. It was a Kickstarter I backed. I actually love the thing. But it's a little writing device. And I started writing on it and the words just flowed. And I'm like, well, this is where the words live. I'm not even going to try to write on any other devices. This is what this book is being drafted on.
Yeah.
Side note, I did look it up and they are lyrics from Eminem's Not Afraid. Go to that place to get to this one. So that is it was Eminem who I was referencing. I'm like, someone's gonna know.
Yeah. Yeah, I often do that too when I'm like, I don't remember who said this. So someone in the comments, please just correct me
Yeah.
because I don't know what I'm talking about. But I know someone said it. I just don't know who.
I
It
want to give
wasn't me.
props. I just
Yeah.
don't know who to give props to.
Yeah, exactly. So just respecting your time, I would like to try something new
Okay.
on you. I would like to pull a card and then have you recommend me one of your books or a trope or something, like whatever calls to you. I'm going to trust you with this because you've been reading
Okay.
tarot for a while. If any
Okay.
other authors are listening and they are on the podcast, I won't make you do this. Elise knows what she's doing.
I'm not
And
afraid.
yeah, exactly. And normally I would just kind of explain it to them, but I trust that you will know.
We'll see. We'll test
Okay.
my knowledge. And I'd be curious to hear if you agree or disagree, because one of the things I
Okay.
love about tarot is that everyone kind of interprets the cards a little bit differently,
Yeah.
and has a little bit of their own flair to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very, and I've been working with tarot on and off since I was in my teens. But I took a course from a woman, her business is Persephone's sister, and she
Mm.
does archetypal tarot reading from a like Jungian psychology perspective. And it just
Fun.
really called to me, and I took her class and I love it. So that's why I kind of sit with the cards a little bit, like why I draw them early and then I sit with them for a bit and then I re-listen to the interview and then I interpret them from there because I'm a pattern seeker. That's what I love the patterns. Okay. We have the world.
Laughing, because the world is the legendary power that they're trying to steal from the king in Arcana
What?
Academy. Tiny spoiler, but a tiny one. You figure it out pretty quickly. I think it's like
Right.
chapter 4 or 5. So like,
Okay.
don't be up in arms about it. But yes,
Don't come for us.
don't come for us. But yeah, that is what I immediately think of as, Arcana Academy with that for that exact reason.
Okay. That's fantastic. See, this is why I love tarot.
Yeah, right?
That's very cool. Okay. And so we will learn more about that in book 2 then.
Yes, but you learn a bit in book 1, you learn even more in book 2.
Okay.
And you learn a lot in book 2 about that.
Right. And then we're going full steam to the end.
Full steam to the end.
All right. Oh, okay. Well, where can people find you, pick up your books, interact with you, be in your world?
I am couple of places. I do have traditionally published books. Arcana Academy is through Del Rey. I have Dragon Curse through Mayhem, which is an imprint of Entangled. And I have, like I mentioned, my Married to Magic series is being republished through Del Rey. So those books you are most likely to find at, your big brick and mortar bookstores, or if you want to pick them up at like an indie bookstore, they're going to have no trouble kind of ordering them in if they don't already have them on hand at the store. All of my independent titles, those you're probably better off looking online, to be honest, just because independent titles are harder for bookstores to carry. That being said, we do love to support an independent bookstore. And usually if you go to an independent bookstore and you say that you want to buy a copy, they can order it in for you. So if you have a local store that you want to support, most independent books can be ordered in. They're just not going to order like a case of them to put on the shelves for reasons I'm not going to get into now. I also have a signed book shop. It's shop.elisekova.com, so you can find all of my indie stuff and some of my trad stuff on that shop. My regular website is elisekova.com, and from there you'll find links to, I would say the 3 socials I'm most active on are, number 1 would be Instagram, and that's at elise.kova. Number 2 would be TikTok at Elise Kova. And then my Facebook, I have an author page, but I'm really more active in my Facebook groups, which if you're already on my website, elisekova.com, go to my subscribe or connect with me page and you'll find out more about my reader groups, my newsletter. Please subscribe to my newsletter. That is honestly the best way to get information because we are, as we talked about at the very beginning, full circle moment, but the algorithmic gods hate us these days. So newsletter is honestly the best place. And my newsletters are long. I admit, but I try to only send them once a month unless I have like a sale or a release or something like that. And I try to give all of the information you might need that you might have missed because the algorithms are cruel. So that's kind of everything. Prince of Swords is up for pre-order now. The Married to Magic republications are coming out every couple months this year. Other ones are up for pre-order too. I hope you'll check those out. And thanks for listening, everyone, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Thank you for listening to the Quill and Kettle podcast. If you have found inspiration in this conversation, please share it with a friend or leave a review wherever you are listening. If the cards have brought up anything for you, I would love to hear your interpretations in the comments. And please head to quillandkettle.com to sign up for weekly editor's notes where I talk writing, marketing, and branding from an intuitive perspective. If you would like to go deeper into each episode, be sure to join the Athenaeum for extended tarot reflections as well as behind the scenes and bonus content. So I think you picked up that this show is about thinking for yourself and following your own path, but for legal and ethical reasons, I just have to say it. The views and opinions expressed by the guests of the Quill and Kettle podcast do not necessarily represent the views of the podcast or anyone who works for it. All stories portrayed in this podcast are meant for entertainment purposes only and are not meant to be taken as mental health, medical, financial, or business advice.